Welcome to episode 6 of Locking In with Ramsey and Eric. Today we have on Eric. And Eric, do you want to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah. So my name is Eric Lombardi. I am a writer with The Hub. I'm also the founder of More Neighbors Toronto. And in my day job, I am a independent management consultant focused on M&A and fundraising. You'll also have probably seen some of my work with the Ontario Liberal Party.
So, Eric, why did you want to come on to the podcast today?
Mostly because you're my friend, and I think people who are trying to produce content that is engaging and even interesting is just of value. So why not?
So I guess then, what do you have to say about like locking in? Like, what are your thoughts on that? How have you been locking in lately? Maybe.
Yeah, well, I like the concept of this podcast because what you're encouraging people to do is to commit to things and to themselves, right? And I think it's particularly like as you're coming of age, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty about your future, what you can do. Are you going to be successful? And I think, you know, even the ways that we are mentored in our youth, right? Like, here's a great example. A teacher grows up in the education system, then they go get their degree, and then they get their master's in teaching, and then that qualifies them to get into a teaching role where, you know, they progress levels in a fairly regimented fashion. I do think a lot of young people face like a lot of pressure to try to lock in to exactly what their future is going to be very early. And I think, you know, one of the things that is kind of like interesting to me is, and you'll hear people, particularly like in the technology crowd, say this, but like you can actually just do things. And, you know, 10 years ago, even when I was in university, would I expect where I am today at that time doing what I am currently? Absolutely not. So, you know, to me, locking in was almost like realizing that, hey, I'm fairly good at what I do, and I don't have to follow a strict path in order to be successful. And for the most part, I can kind of do the things that I'm interested in and want if I try.
I like this framing because, and I've been like thinking about the name, like it was locked in, now it's locking in. And I think like what you're saying is like a lot of people have pressure to like get locked into something early, but actually that's not what it looks like, right? To me, it's like it's a continuous process. It's always changing. You don't know where you're going to be in 10 years, and like you're locking in like it's like every day you're locking into something new. It's changing a little bit. Like you're figuring out what can I do, what can't I do. Let's try this. Like
yeah, and I even tell people like I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah,
but I also already have like, in my opinion, a very good career, but who knows if that's going to be what my career is in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years.
By any
now.
Objective measure, you're definitely like, you know, grown up in a lot of like ways, traditional ways, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, you're still figuring out what you want to do, and like it's a continuous process. And
like becoming an adult is realizing that everyone is just trying to figure it out as they go along, and you know, it simplifies things a lot, right? Like I remember, you know, when I was doing like my first co-ops at Waterloo, and you're really nervous about, well, like how people are going to judge you. Is the quality of your work actually going to be good? And you kind of realize that like most people pay far more attention to how they think others are perceiving them than the perceiving that others are doing of them in a particular moment. And like to me, that was like almost like a form of freedom where like I could go do a lot more, because most people are just trying to get through the day, and like they're not judging you or caring in a negative way as much as you would think when you're like coming out of high school and into university in these like highly social environments, right?
Yeah. Like I think just like, people are thinking about themselves, and I think to me, like I think a long time ago somebody said, oh, like don't worry about what people think of you, because like they're thinking about what you're thinking about them, right? But I think that's even more than that. Is like the reason that everybody's thinking about themselves is because everyone's still figuring it out. even like adults that you think like, oh, this guy's got to have figured it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm sure some 18-year-old could be watching this. He's like, oh man, Eric's got it figured out. He's fucking locked in. And you're like, no, like I'm figuring it out. Like, you know, the 55-year-old at your work, like he's figuring it out. Like everyone's just figuring it out day to day. And that's why, like, so they're not thinking about you because they're thinking about what am I doing today? Like nothing's ever totally figured out. You're just figuring it out as you go. And that's a constant process. And so, yeah, you can.
Yeah. And like, even like one of the ways like I think about some of these things is just like, you actually, like, to me, you shouldn't actually optimize for getting to an endpoint, right? Like your window of opportunity shouldn't be getting narrower, right? Like this is who I'm going to be at the end, right? To me, the actual optimization problem is like, how do you actually keep as many options open as possible for longer? Like the more doors that close, the fewer choices you have, and then the less freedom you have. So like almost like if you're gonna go back to like the locking in concept, is like lock in to maximizing the options in your journey rather than try to lock into one form of self that you can imagine yourself in.
Right. I think I like that and I agree with that. And I think like, yeah, I've been exploring spirituality a bit recently. And I think some of the things I've learned there is like, it's about like making yourself more adaptable to different conditions and like able to handle like this or that or whatever comes your way, or like realizing, oh, maybe next year I'm like, actually, I want to do that. And like being ready to go do something different if that's what I want to do, rather than being like, this is what I'm doing and that's it and that's done and that's not going to change anymore. And I think growing up, like that's a lot of how I was taught. It's like, this is who you are, this is who you're going to be, and like go do that. And it's like, that's not, at least the way I've understood the world, that's not how things work.
Yeah. Like, I agree. And I also think sometimes we like try to maximize for things that are like not the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, one of my good friends, she wants to be a social worker, and she wanted to do that because she was like, she doesn't want a job that feels soulless, right? Which is fine. Like, you need people to make decisions like that. But it was like such a different way of thinking than like where I come from, right? Like where I'm at is like, look, I want to work with people that I like. I want interesting problems to solve, and I want to get paid a decent amount of money for it so I can have, you know, the type of lifestyle that I want. And it's not necessarily a particular occupation that gets you there, but to me, it's like how you develop relationships with people and making sure that the journey of what you're trying to accomplish, it doesn't have to be like, you know, like I work in finance, right? Like, you know, maximizing the allocation of capitals to most people probably not like the most moral chasing. But like to me, I get to work with intelligent people that I like, pays me well. And for the most part, like, you know, the things that you get to work on ensure that our lives are fairly seamless. Like I've done like a lot of work in payments. And it's like, people don't even think about how simple payments have become versus just like 40 years ago, right? So like,
I mean, this stuff is really important though, too. Like you got to give yourself some credit, Eric. This is important stuff. It needs to be done, and if you enjoy it, you get paid well. Like that's all important. Like
which is all to say, focus on less what you want to be and more on the experiences that you want to have and the relationships and people you want to have around you while you're having those experiences. And in the end, you're actually going to end up, in my opinion, with more happiness and more achievement or success. It just might not be in the way that you would have originally planned if you were just looking at the deadline.
No, it's interesting. Like I feel like this is just like that. There's like this really old simple wisdom, but it's about the journey, not the destination. Yeah. And like, I feel like I was not raised that way. Like I was raised thinking about the destination and always thinking about the destination, like who I want to be, and not about the journey and the process and locking in and like actually enjoying it, right? And it's interesting to think about that now. Of like this is just like very simple wisdom. You just hear this phrase out, but it's like it's hard to conceptualize and like actually start living that way. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in like a lot of these like sort of like small pieces of like old wisdom, right? Like, for example, I think it's odd that people segment their lives into personal and business relationships. I think people are just people, and relationships are the depth of feeling and knowledge towards another person. So to me, like, if there's someone I like with that I work with, they're not a person I work with. They're a person that I like, that I happen to work with, and I care about their lives, etc. And you know, I found that like because I give trust to people, and I'm willing to, you know, actually take an interest, that, you know, it's benefited me in a lot of ways, because now there's all these former colleagues and people I've worked with who I actually just now see as friends.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I think we've found very unique ways to make things complicated. But I actually think people are not that complicated. They mostly just want to be heard and self-actualized and feel like people care about them. Right. And if you like satiate those things, you know, people will be happy, and maybe even your friend.
This is, yeah, this is, I 100% agree. And this is like, I have so many thoughts about this. I'm trying to put them together. But like, because I think like the way I was raised was to not think this way. And I think the way I was raised was very much about like worrying about other people's emotions and like playing the game of like not saying the wrong thing and not doing the wrong thing. And like a lot of this, like it's not about honesty. It's not about like having a good connection, right? It's very much about like, I guess it's a lot more outcomes focused.
Yeah.
It's what do I need to say to this person to get like the outcome, to get the destination that I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
And so then when you live your life like that, when you live like a lot of your life like that, you start applying that to your business relationships. It's what do I need to say to this person to like get the sale, right? Yeah. Rather than, hey, let's build a genuine connection with this person, which it turns out people like better, right? And actually that will get you the sale better, right?
Yeah. My mentor, and he's you know the owner of a firm I do business with. He's done a ton for me. I think you came to my 30th birthday. So like he hosted that.
Yeah. Very cool guy.
Like super cool guy. And when he was trying to recruit me back from the startup I was looking at, he was like, look, I want a 20-year relationship with you, right? And some of it's gonna be business, but a lot of it's gonna be personal. Like and I was like, you know, it's actually a very interesting way to like think about, you know, to me what was like a value of that was just like this person was saying, I don't necessarily care what decision you make, but like just know that I'm planning to be around your life,
right?
And I'm investing in you. And it really took me aback, because like no one had said something so explicit to me before. But now I've met people.
I really like this.
I've met people now, and I'm like, holy crap! I actually really like this person.
Yeah.
And I actually think that this person will be in my life longer. And it's like I've met friends. This was like probably 2 or 3 years ago. Like someone who I like met him at a party, and I was just like, I actually think you're a really cool person. Like, like, can I ask you on like a friend date? And they were like, what? Right. But I was like, look, like I'm not like trying to ask you out intimately. I thought you were cool and I'd like to hang out. And now we're like really good friends. And I've tried that now on a couple of people in, you know, different aspects of my life. And, you know, maybe I'm going off on a different tangent here, but like adults don't get positive reinforcement very often. Like meeting someone at a party and be like, hey, I actually like you enough to like ask you out as a friend is rare. Most people like don't have the confidence to do that. And like what I've since realized is like every person I've done that to has responded like extraordinarily well. It was like the best compliment that they've had in ages. I don't know where I'm going with this other than to say...
I have a lot to say about this, so...
You should tell people when you have a good vibe and you like them, you should just tell them that you think they're cool and you want to hang out or become friends, because people actually don't get enough of that often enough. And I think people let these moments pass them by. And I think, you know, if more people were to say, hey, I met this person, I like them, and I'm going to tell them that and act on it, you're going to have way more relationships that are better and make a lot of people happy. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that.
It's okay. I have a lot to say about this. I can take this in a lot of directions, but like I think to me this is almost kind of the same problem actually we were talking about earlier of like the like goal oriented versus like moment oriented, and like in that moment you're thinking about like I like this person and I want to hang out with them more, right? And I think like it's the same thing for just like asking someone out on a date too, is people are very focused on the outcome and they're worried about like what if the outcome is bad? What if this person says I don't like me, right? And then that's bad. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to think about that outcome, right? Well, what if they don't like me? What if they don't want to hang out with me?
If I go on a date and like that person doesn't like me, terrible taste.
This is the thing, right? Exactly. That's the right attitude, right? Is if you're going into it with like, I want to hang out with this person. If they don't like me, like sucks. I'm great, right? That's good. You're like you're thinking about I want to hang out with this person, whether it's a date or a friend date or whatever it is. You're thinking about like locking it. You're not thinking about the outcome. You're not thinking about like, am I getting married or am I getting rejected? You're just thinking about I want to hang out with this person more.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like that's the attitude you need for like so much of life that I think is missing from people right now is like it's outcomes focused. It's not in the moment focused. And then like it's I think that's where like the like why people are scared to do this kind of thing is because they're worried about that rejection.
Yeah.
Right. And I really liked like what the guy you're working with said, where he wants to spend more time with you and he wants to like build a stronger relationship with you.
Yeah.
But there's not like an expectation for it. He's not thinking about the outcome of like in 20 years, this is what it's going to look like. He's just saying, I'm planning for a longer relationship, right? I'm going to keep working with you because I like you. But what I'm focused on today is like, this is what we're doing now. And like, that is the step that will lead to a longer thing. But like, if it doesn't happen, like,
it was just the audacity of just being like you don't realize it, but like we're gonna have a very long and fruitful and good like relationship, and I'm just telling you that up front, regardless of what your choice is, if it's gonna come to work with me now or not.
Well, like I've never heard of a version that extreme of like this idea that I have in my head of like you go into the thing with no expectations, but you think about what do I want to do in the moment? Yeah. What is the journey? You don't think about the end, but you plan you don't expect the outcome, but you do plan for it, right? And you're like, I have a feeling that like this is going to be a long-term thing. I'm going to invest in you, right? Yeah. As somebody that I'm working with for a longer-term thing because I want that, but like it's there's no expectation. You don't have to, right? You could just ditch me and like I guess sucks for me, but also sucks for you. Right, I'm letting you know that like I'm investing in you in this way, right? And so like now you're like, whoa, actually like they're doing it not out of a place of like you owe me, but out of a place of like I want to invest in you. I think you'd be good to work with, and like when I hear that too, then I'm like, oh, like actually I want to stick around for that now. Like that's great.
Like it was such a like a psych because like I was just like it is such an explicit thing to say. People don't hear. You know, once again, like people don't hear that they're appreciated or things like that, especially like men. Like, like they don't get positive feedback as much as they probably deserve. Like men don't have this culture. You know, I guess I'm like generalizing. We're like, you know, group of girlfriends. It's like, oh, you're so great. Like you're so pretty. Like men don't really do that, right? No. So like to me, like someone telling me like I'm explicitly like like. I think we're just going to have a long friendship relationship and it's going to be positive for both of us. And like, I'm thinking this way. So I'm telling you that was just such a mind shift and also how I think about relationships with people. Cause like I'll have someone come in my life and be like, you know what? Like I actually want like a 20-year relationship with this person now. Like I think you're cool. I want you in my life. Like I'm now invested in where you're going.
Well, even like we had an episode about marriage and like this is part of the thing we were talking about is like how do you like think about marriage with this kind of context, right? And for me, I was like, I don't think about the super far future because I'm very in the moment. But like, you can do both, I guess, in a sense. But it's not outcome focused. It's I want to experience a longer thing with you, and I'm going to invest in, like, let's say marriage. I'm going to invest in marriage. I'm going to do all these steps, but like, and that's going to make the other person want to do that with you too. Then,
like, a long marriage isn't a goal, right?
Yeah.
The journey of being that connected to someone for your whole life, in which that person is going to be incredibly special and impactful for you in your life. Like, we're kind of talking about the journey.
Yeah.
But like, that journey is the goal.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for a lot of people, it's the goal.
When I think, to me, like, when I think about traditional marriage, what I don't like about it is that it feels very, like outcome goal oriented. Like, it's like, to me, the thing that like distinguishes marriage from other relationships is till death do us part. And to me, that sounds very much like we're thinking about literally the end of our life, right? We're not thinking about day to day. We're thinking about at the end of our life, this is what we're going to do. And now we're going to like make a promise for that, right? And to me, I'm like, that doesn't really fit with how I live my life. But the idea here, I guess, is rather than thinking about that, thinking about I want to spend that much of my life with you, I'm going to make the investment and care and choices to try and do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know,
this podcast can get me married.
It's a form of
not plan.
It's a form of like also saying like committing that deeply to someone is how do I describe it? Like you're giving away part of yourself, but you're also getting way more in return because you're also getting someone to like commit to you. And I actually do think one of the things that's good about this generation, we're probably not marrying as much as we should, but the people who are getting married are committing more. If you look at data, like divorce rates,
I think it's more intentional,
and
right?
it's a lot more intentional than it was in the past. And I think for the most part, you know, you're going to end up happier. Which is all to say, I'm single. So maybe this is like getting tired of like dating. But you know, it's always funny when I go to like my married friends, and they're always like super interested in like the dating life and like all the excitement of it too. And it's just like it's not that exciting. I'm tired. Like just give me someone I can hunker down with, so I can like go invest in other parts of my life. Yeah. Anyways, I know where I was going with that.
I think that you do. I mean, you know, let's not go too much on the marriage because I'm not. I don't know these things. But where else did I want to go with this? Talking about marriage, and it's interesting, the commitment, because like I don't like commitments. Again, like you were saying earlier, like you want to keep your options open when you're on the journey. You want to like stay adaptable, and I guess I don't like the idea of committing to something that will limit me that much.
So maybe here's the alternate way, because I actually don't think you can have a good life if you haven't committed to things. Right? Like, but commitment isn't a pledge. It's an investment. Okay. Right? And like commitment, like an investment, is a form of wealth. And wealth, when you know, a commitment isn't just like a one-time thing. It's a recurring thing. And every time you act on that commitment in a positive way, you build a form of capital that isn't necessarily monetary, but nevertheless is a form of personal wealth in some way. And so, like, I think when it comes to commitment, you know, you should definitely consider the commitments you make, but you should definitely not aspire to live your life in a way that is without commitment, right?
No, because I mean, even I was just thinking, like, I have made a commitment to pay my rent at this place, so it's not like I don't have commitments, right?
Yeah.
But there's value to that for me, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would put something like rent in like an obligation, or like, you know, the first level of like the Maslow's pyramid of needs. Like, I think commitments that are investments sort of like are like in the areas of like self-actualization, like as you go beyond your basic needs of like food, shelter, sustenance.
Well, I guess the reason I was thinking of that is because like you do need those to get to, so like those enable my self-actualization, right? If I did not make a commitment to like rent a certain place for like I could normally last for like a year commitment, right? If I was like living in an Airbnb where there's like no commitment and I can just leave anytime, right? That's going to cost me a lot of like money, but also like if I'm constantly moving places or something, that's going to take out a lot of my energy. Like there's something, there's like a kind of capital you gain for like getting used to a place, like setting it up in the way that you want, right? And those help enable your self-actualization.
Which I actually think is a great argument for home ownership. Like
Yeah, because that's an even bigger commitment.
People tell me all the time, like, well, like, it's okay if like more people rent, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with renting. I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with renting. But also, I think there's like an itch that gets scratched in like our biological psyche of just having ownership and the right to change things in the space that we view as ours, right? And which is why, like, when people are like, well, you know, maybe we just need to just, you know, accept that most people won't own homes in the future. I'm like, no, I'm like not willing to accept that reality, because you've taken something fundamental from, I think, human psychology, which is to have a sense of ownership of self in place, away from people. And like, you know, back on like the topic of commitment, like a big one for me, you know, I moved to San Francisco for a couple of years in my mid-20s to work for like a startup. And then during COVID, you know, I kind of had this realization, like job opportunities, etc., are good and interesting in San Francisco. But I always knew that I wanted to end up back in Canada. You know, my family is important to me. I knew eventually my sister would get married and probably start having kids. You know, I was hoping similar for myself. You know, asterisks a bit more difficult as a gay man. But, you know, well, do I want my family to be a part of my life? And it's like, okay, like, why did I move to San Francisco for a job when the place that I wanted my commitment to be was Toronto? And then even thinking about like, well, I could have a better paying job in San Francisco. And I'd actually say that, you know, I don't actually think that's true for me personally anymore. I actually think I'm ahead in Toronto than where I would have been in SF now. But it was sort of like, why am I here investing my time and my energy and my relationships in a place ultimately that I don't want to build my life?
Right.
And now I'm wasting all this time and, you know, career capital, relationship capital, social capital on a place where I'm probably going to discard a lot of that to go back to the place where I ultimately wanted to be. And so like during the pandemic, I had like a mental, I was like, do you know what? I want to commit to building my life in Toronto, and now I need to go back. Right. Yeah. And once I realized I was committing, I feel like I was really able to like invest in my career and like the relationships I wanted to build to help me in my career because I had already made the commitment that it was going to be in Toronto. And like the same is true about like getting involved in politics. When I lived in Toronto before I moved to San Francisco, I was already very interested in politics, but I never got involved because I was like, well, you know, I might be moving soon, blah, blah, blah. Then when I came back, I was like, no, like I'm committed to here. Now I want to see how I can help move the needle on some of the problems I feel like we're having that like I don't accept that I have to tolerate as a consequence of making the choice to live here. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah, if I like, I'm trying to understand the concept. I think it's helping me to see this idea clearly of like, you make a commitment to something. And I think like when you make a commitment, then you spend, I guess you're gonna spend more time with whatever that thing is, and you're gonna build some capital, some kind of relationship with that, whether it's your home or it's a person or it's a place. So like when you take a job in SF, that means you're committing to like rent a place there, live your life there, talk to like the people you hang out with are gonna be people in SF. You're gonna build your career in SF. If you're gonna get involved in anything outside of that, like you're committing to like building capital in all these ways, like social capital, personal capital in SF.
Yeah.
Right? You're committing to that. And if you want to like have a better life in SF in the future, if that's something that you desire, then that would be good, because now in the future you'll have built up all of these kinds of capital in SF.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to build up capital and stuff, you don't want to like, that's not where you're looking to go, then it doesn't make sense to do that. You're like,
I mean, it's compounding, right? I maybe this is like a very finance pro opinion, but like there are many different forms of wealth. We almost exclusively think about them as financial, but that's actually just not true, right? And oftentimes financial wealth is actually derivative of other forms of wealth that you have, right? Like acquiring and accumulating knowledge is a form of wealth. And in fact, I think the more knowledge you have, yes, they say, you know, there's more that you realize that you don't know, but then there's more connections between pieces of information that you can make, right?
Well, even just like a degree is like a commitment to learn about this one thing for 4 years, and you're going to build up knowledge, like capital of that thing, and then you will like be more, you will have more capital in that specific thing. And if you don't commit to a degree for 4 years, you can't learn that much about that thing.
I do think one of the challenges that we have though in education and, you know, looking for a degree, for instance, is that people see them more as like job training certificates.
Yes, yeah.
And like we don't really treat it as like a pursuit of knowledge and socialization.
Well, this is like, the same problem as earlier, is that I'm getting the degree for like, I want to get a degree so I can get a job. It's about the end goal. It's not about, I want to learn this thing. And like, that's how people are socialized. Because that's like, your parents are telling you, oh man, you got to get a job. You got to get a degree to get a job. So I'm thinking, what degree is going to get me a job, right? And then,
right. And I think that's actually, I think we've done something a bit perverse. Like we actually, so we both study nanotechnology engineering and do nothing related to it. I am absolutely convinced that we should probably have a longer period of generalized education. You know, one of my exes, he went to Columbia in New York, and it's one of the things that's, you know, like I didn't understand before I dated him, like the model of like a Canadian university where, hey, I've signed up for a degree this first year. Like I am studying, I'm 18 years old and I'm going to study nanotechnology engineering because my future is building stuff that's small, right? Like it's ridiculous, like on its face, that you're asking people to make such a specific decision.
Well, I think actually Waterloo is special with that compared to other schools. And that at other engineering schools in Canada, you don't pick in the first year.
But you often have to pick in the second year. But like if you're going to, for example, Columbia, you're not picking that like I'm just doing engineering. You have two paths. You do like a more math and science path and a more liberal arts path.
Oh.
But the difference is like it's like 3/5, 2/5. So if you go down the liberal arts path, 2/5 of what you have to learn, at least in your first 2 years, are in the sciences and maths. And like the goal is to create, I think, people who have broader competencies beyond just the fixed skill set of their degree. And I actually think if we thought about that component, I actually think a lot of businesses would probably be happier with the type of graduates that you're getting. Like one of the big complaints about when you get engineers from somewhere like Waterloo is that like there's no communication skills. And I remember when we were doing work term reports, like people would get like terrible marks. And like, how did you get a 60 on this? Like it's easy. You just write it up. They almost like don't care what your project was. And then like I'll read a friend's work term report and I'm like, oh, so like you're not like literate beyond like a 6th grade, right? Like you're really adept at calculus, but you can't communicate. Like that's going to limit you because you can have tons of brilliant ideas happening in your head, yet if you don't know how to tell your story and express those things in a way that's communicated well, you're kind of screwed. And like I think back to some of the moments I had like in Frosh Week where like the, you know, young men coming into engineering were like, oh, who would study English at Waterloo? How ridiculous are those people? And I'm like, at least they're going to be able to communicate what they think. And that's like 80% of being an adult in the corporate world is just like being able to communicate the things that you are doing. And so I actually think that we would probably be healthier as a society where like we went back to a model where like university was more like a finishing school. And like you might have done by the end of it engineering, right? And you know, maybe separated into different areas. But frankly, like if everyone does a little bit of process engineering, a bit of mechanical and structural engineering, a little bit of electronics, a little bit of computer engineering, a lot of what you're going to learn and do with your career can be learned at whatever you're doing in the end. And for a lot of people, they'll find that like their career takes them somewhere very different than what they were educated in. Like, I helped buy and sell companies. Didn't learn any of that studying nanotechnology engineering, right? I learned how to learn. And I think if we, I don't know, I think if we made knowledge and being diverse people the ultimate goal of higher education, you're going to end up with better employees. And I do think that like companies, etc., should actually take up more of the mantle of training people and seeing them as longer term assets as well.
So I agree with this generally thing, but I think the question that comes up with me when we're talking about this is thinking back to the idea of commitment.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you're almost saying that we don't, like, in terms of knowledge, we shouldn't actually commit as much to one thing, right? We should be more generalist, like keep our options open, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm trying to square, how do we think of like maybe like, is it better to just like, you know, choose nanotechnology and just commit to it, and like you're going to build up more like nanotechnology engineering capital by doing that, versus saying like, actually I want to stay generalist, I want to learn a little bit of this, I want to learn a little bit of that, because that is really valuable, like learning some philosophy and some psychology and some English. Like I feel like those are all really useful skills for like being a better engineer too.
When I think back to some of the things that I did in university, almost all the credits that I did that were not part of my core degree have stuck with me longer. Like I did a course in rhetoric,
Right.
and obviously I'm doing stuff in you know, politics now, and I find like, how do you think about persuasion in different forms, right? Like pathological, which is, you know, really trying to pry to people's base emotions or reactivity. You know, you have ethical, which is what do you value and how do you see yourself in the world, and how do you align what's happening with your underlying morals. And then there's logos, which is like logic. Like does A plus B equal C?
Yeah.
Right? And like you learn if you study rhetoric, that like logos is broadly seen as the least persuasive form of rhetoric. And then, you know, I talk to people who are like, well, like voters are so illogical, and like, why aren't they picking up this like logical thing that I'm saying? It's like, well, because people don't have a logical frame of thinking about the universe. They, you know, pathological is actually the easiest way to get people to react negatively. And like, look how, you know, why have we been largely not governed democratically throughout human history? And why is it so easy for people to cave to things like strongmen? And like, just look at how Trump does it, right? His forms of rhetoric are pathological. They bring up people's emotions very quickly. They rile people up to something more basic.
Yeah.
And like really the only counter to that is like ethical. So like when you frame even arguments, right, you need to focus, to me, more on the ethical point of view rather than the logical point of view. And this is all to go back to my point of saying like the knowledge of how to think about persuasion has been far more useful to me in my life than like statistical thermodynamics was, right? And so, I don't know, maybe...
Can you explain the three again? Because I haven't studied rhetoric at all.
Yeah.
Although statistical thermodynamics has actually very much stuck with me in ways that I didn't expect.
Okay, we're gonna have to unpack
that's
that
another
trauma.
story.
So, by the way, I think everyone should just like, you know, anyone who studied English has probably read Rhetoric by Aristotle, but he kind of like goes through these three forms of rhetoric. So pathos is pathological, right? Or pathology. So pathology is like a visceral reaction to something that you've had, right? Like, oh, like this immigrant came and stole your job, right? Like, it's like, oh, that was unfair. I didn't deserve to have that taken from me. But that piece of rhetoric didn't actually tell you that it was unfair or that it was even a job that you wanted to do, right? The logical thing would be say, hey, actually there's more questions there. But the reaction that someone might get from that without the next level of thinking, that is like how pathological rhetoric affects people.
Right. Yeah, that is very effective.
Right?
For sure. Like to get to people's emotions. And
then you have ethos, which is ethics, right? So, hey, you know, you should want immigrants to be doing something that brings them value, brings our society value, and might actually be more positive sum than you're thinking, because this person is similar to you. They have goals and dreams, and they're trying to achieve those things through their life. And you never realize that, like, hey, this person's activity might have done, maybe I'm going more logical with this, right? But
this does sound kind of logical to me.
Sorry, but like, you know, that person has a right to be able to pursue the occupations that they want. And they have a right to want to live in potentially a better country than they came from.
Right.
Or one that makes them happier. And we should be open to that, because we wouldn't want someone to give us the same opportunity if we were in their shoes. Right? So that's more of like the like ethical argument. And oftentimes it's much easier to defeat a pathological form of rhetoric with an ethical one rather than a logical one, which is, hey, actually, like, you know, this immigrant might have not taken a job. They might have resulted in actually creating a job, or they're doing something that
you start talking about the stats
you wouldn't want to do,
of immigration,
right? And you know, that might have actually benefited you economically. Like, that's logic. And you almost always lose people with logical arguments, which is like a shame, but also I think it makes sense, because you know,
we're not robots, so
we're not robots, and almost the entirety of our existence as a species, we have been lacking in proper data and information to make judgments. But we have had a lot of spiritualism, and you know, we are a tribe species. So you know, the amount of time that we've even had an arsenal of information to have logical arguments hasn't been there nearly as long as our ability to have pathological and ethical ones.
Right.
And so I think that's why they're more appealing.
Yeah, especially in like that kind of small group. Yeah, you don't have much data, but like if everybody kind of has emotions that help them like stand up for themselves and get what they want, that can kind of work pretty well in like those kinds of societies. And yeah, we're in a very different society now, and we're learning how to use these tools differently. And like, even I think it's like, because we have so much data now, at least for me, like I feel like we don't know how to, like, we don't understand ourselves very well, so we don't know how these emotions work, how they're supposed to work, how like they worked in the past. And I think in some ways, like you know, you can be a water engineer and not have to learn communication, and just like go get your co-op, and you don't even know any of these things, right? And you can get pretty far these days without those tools. Yeah. Versus like in the tribe, if you did not have communication, like they're just throwing you out of the town, right? You're just starving to death now, right? You didn't really have a choice there. Yeah. And so it's like how do we, now that like in some ways those tools are not as necessary as they were, but like I think in some ways they are just as necessary if we want to actually like flourish, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've almost, you know, if you even just think about information in general, like information has been a form of scarcity for like all of human existence up until maybe the last 15 years. And so almost all the ways that we had to gather information and validate it have been curated by people who had control over it. And I would actually say, to some extent, that was probably a good thing, because there was more accountability for presenting information that was wrong. Like, I think a lot about our, you know, news media landscape today. And the reality is, good information is often behind a paywall, right? But there's plenty of terrible information and people who have interpreted information terribly, coming up with new interpretations. Like,
yeah, I feel like this is going to lead into a sponsor segment, because there's ground news. That's the one. This is like exactly how the sponsor segments sound for it. Yeah, but they're not paying us yet, so don't go to ground news. They're not. You didn't hear that.
I've never used ground news.
Exactly, and he's smart. So,
well, thank you. Only not all would say. But no, because like I actually think about a couple of different problems, right? Like, I think social media has been very hard on our society and social capital. But like, you know, we went from an information era where like, if I want to go learn about the economy of Zimbabwe, I had to go to the library and look at like an atlas.
Yeah.
And that atlas might have been information from 5 years ago, whenever the library purchased that atlas. And the segment on the economy of Zimbabwe might be like a paragraph, right? And now like I can, you know, jerk off before bed and be like, oh, I wonder how Zimbabwe is doing. And like at my fingertips.
Yeah.
Right. And
everyone has access to that immediately.
And I think almost universally when like the internet and things were introduced, everyone was gonna be like, wow, this is gonna improve people's intelligence and access to knowledge in like these incredible ways. And instead it like the opposite has happened, in which like we've been distracted by so much information that I almost feel like people have lost curiosity because we've found unique and special ways to satiate our, you know, need for like dopamine, right? And I think it's resulted in like, you know, a collapse in like volunteerism, right? Like, hey, I can lay at home and watch Netflix and scroll on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't need to satiate my boredom by going to learn a hobby or like go to a bar to like meet people because I feel like I need social interaction.
Yeah.
And like I think a lot of the problems now that we're facing are like kind of derivative of like this mass sort of reduction in social capital that's kind of happened as a result.
Right.
And what I don't know is this like a blip and we'll learn to have a better relationship with digital tools? Or is it kind of downhill from here?
So, I mean, I'm an optimist and I have a lot of like dense theories about this stuff, but like, the version I think relevant for right now, like I think it is a blip. I think it's like on the graph that, you know, keeps going up. Like you need to have a bust to have a boom. Yeah. And I think I think we were talking about in the past, like you had like authority figures, I guess, that distributed information.
Yeah. Like, I think like the Globe and Mail.
Yeah.
Right.
I think on average, the people behind those had like more like liberal artsy kind of skills, like wisdom and philosophy and like that kind of knowledge and understanding than the average person did. Right. And maybe even compared to the average person now, like they kind of understood this stuff. They they had more just general education. Right.
Yeah.
And so they were like, when they were curating that, they weren't doing the best job and they're making lots of mistakes, but they were doing a better job than the average person.
Yeah.
But now the average person can do that all the time for themselves, and they're not equipped to do that, right? And so like you can't just give everyone access to everything and expect things to go fine because they don't know what to do with that. Right. And I didn't know what to do with that. Like when I was growing up, right. I think, you know, the internet came to me and I was lost. Yeah. And I was just taking the dopamine hits and I didn't know how to deal with that. And it wasn't great. And now I'm starting to figure out like, okay, this is how to like handle social media better, handle internet better, handle dopamine hits better, like how to like, you know, you can watch Netflix sometimes and not like all the time. Right. You can get some dopamine hits from the internet. You can get some dopamine hits from like going outside and doing stuff and like investing in like longer term kind of reward activities, right? Rather than just like short term ones, and like learning how to sift through social media. And I think like it's a skill that people have to learn, and like maybe we won't learn it, but I think like as information has been getting distributed more, like slowly people are starting to learn it. And I feel like part of this podcast is teaching people how to learn it. I watch a lot of Dr. K. I don't know if you've seen him, Healthy Gamer GG on YouTube. No. He's very, very good content. And I think a lot of what he's doing is teaching like gamers who are some of the people I think like most like gamer guys who are people I think most affected by this in some ways, right? How to like live. Yes. And I'm a non-gamer guy, never really got into it. You missed out, Eric.
but I don't mean this to be insulting. But like, I actually do think it's one of the primary challenges that straight men who are under the age of 35 face. And like,
Gaming.
I think gaming, and I think...
So Dr. K, I'm saying he's a hero, okay? Like...
Right, like... Well, you know, I don't know how to like properly go into this, but like, here's where my mind is going. I have quite a few, like, I am a gay man, and I have girlfriends, and like, we talk about dating. And like, I think there is a perception, and I actually don't think it's incorrect, that like, there is a bit of a dearth of dateable men in our age group. And it's not to say that it's even the majority. It's not. Right? But it might be like 25%.
Yeah.
And, you know, the challenge with gaming is that it's a very independent activity. And it also, you know, doesn't force people to like go out in the world. So which is to say, if you're a gamer, there's nothing wrong with gaming, but it should be like a part of your life that is like not that big. Because I also feel just like, you know, modern culture has not been very good to straight men, right? Like, I look at like some of the backlash that's even happening in the US, right? And I don't know how to say this, how to like not be controversial, but like a lot of media has had very strong, like, you know, LGBT characters. You know, I think, you know, cities like Toronto just light up for Pride for like a full month. You know, all women now seem to want or have, you know, their gay best friend, right? And I think, you know, there's been a huge cultural win for LGBT people. And now there's a bit of a backlash to that, to say that like, hey, like the rest of us aren't being seen and our experiences don't seem like they're that important anymore. I don't know where I'm really going with this, other than to say that like, I worry about straight men in particular not being able to launch. And then, you know, when I like talk to my girlfriends, it's just like, it's almost like all the marriageable men get found by like 23 and like they get locked in, you know, like, because we're like, okay, you're a good one. Like, I am locking it. We're hunkering down with this one, right? I mean, I have comments to say if you want. I can go for it.
I mean, so let's see. You were talking about gaming and
I went all over the place there.
And LGBT. So I think like definitely in the past, like I felt like I'm that straight guy that does not get enough attention. Like I have these problems. Nobody's talking about them. I don't know what to do. And I don't think there's like role models or guidance for a lot of these things. And I think when we're talking about like this new social media age, I think like on average, women are better at like the kind of like communication, like wisdom, like emotions kind of stuff than men are. So I think men are a little more vulnerable to the kind of social media, like, yeah, shit. Like we don't know how to deal with this shit. And so I think what women are looking for is guys that like do know how to do that, right? And like but like the guys don't know how to do it, and there's no help for guys, right? Like there's nobody explaining it.
A lot of men don't have the social right to be having a hard time.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
That's a
like
good one.
We've almost like neutered the ability, like, you know, I whenever I like, you know, like see some of the stuff that's like, oh, well, if you're, you know, straight white men have been in charge of the world forever. It's like, well, do you know what? Like, not every straight white guy has had the easiest life in the world. And like, maybe if we are truly liberals, you know, individualism matters, and we should probably not, you know, cohort someone's life experiences individually.
Well, like, to me, this is like part of the problems with some of the like extreme feminism stuff. Is to me like a big part of feminism is that like you can't generalize people. You can't be like all women are like this. Like that's unacceptable, right? Because it's not true.
No.
Right? But then sometimes you have like people that are saying that are like, but all men are like this, and it's like that's also not true. Like the whole point is that everyone's an individual, and like maybe there's trends where men aren't average or more like this, and women aren't average or more like that. But like you don't know this person, right? And it like straight white men have more power on average, especially in the past. Yes, but like that doesn't mean that like this guy you're talking to has power, right? Like you have no idea his life situation, his life story, and his life could literally be shit. And a lot of guys' lives are kind of shit right now. And
I mean, I also
what do you do?
I guess this is related, but I think like, you know, once again, this is, you know, I don't have like direct evidence to substantiate this opinion right now, but like, I do think broadly speaking, men feel more actualized when they have things to take care of, and they're, you know, they get some credit for that, right? Like in the past, it's like, you know, parenthood and fatherhood and things like that, or like, you know, you have like a girlfriend or a partner, and like you want to take care of them, and that brings you value, and you're rewarded socially with credit for those things.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I think there's declining opportunities in this era for people, but especially men, to feel like they have not just ownership, but like responsibility for taking care of things. And I think it's a very good motivator to feel like things or people are counting on you.
For sure.
And, you know, it's almost like, you know, I guess it's related to like purpose, right? And I think the modern society, we've taken away a lot of traditional avenues to find purpose from, I mean, I think everyone in general, I actually think a lot more people live with purposelessness.
Yeah, I think so.
Than we used to, but I think it's been particularly hard on men. Like when you talk about like spiritualism, like look, I am glad that we don't live in like a highly theocratic society as a minority, but I do think that, you know, religion offered people a place where they could have legitimacy, recognition, ownership, and community. And there's sort of been this, in the rise of secularism, we've not really created additional spaces for community and actualization through community and recognition of like simple responsibilities as being worthwhile that I think religion once offered people.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a lot to religion and spirituality that like people don't get anymore. I think part of it is like teaching you about these things about yourself, like how to be responsible, what to be responsible for, like how to think about your feelings and find purpose. And I think we do. I think that is a part of the world and a part of the human spheres that a lot of people are missing.
Yeah.
And I think it's. I think we need more. I mean, I am working on something, so it's we'll see when it comes out.
Yeah.
But I think I found something that works for me, and I think it might work for other people. But I think I think what was missing from the old ones is that they're like very dogmatic, and they're like, this is the only way to live.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, but that's not how I want to live. And I think whatever new thing we find has to accommodate that, like people want to live different lives.
Yeah.
And like to let people live different lives, but then like what does that look like, right?
Well, that's why we need to reform zoning laws so that people, the most direct part of lifestyle that they can really control is where and how they live within that context.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I think about some of this stuff pretty often. It's like, you know, we were a tribal species, and now, you know, most of us either live at home or within like a nuclear family. And I'm like, what if I wanted to like build a commune, and I say this as like a capitalist.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, 6 of my friends have all pitched in. We have each of our own areas, but we also have a bunch of common areas that we share. And like, it would literally be illegal for me to build a similar thing like that based on how buildings are allowed to be built in Ontario.
I feel like so many things we've talked about would like benefit from this. Like you have more community, right? You guys can like, I mean, if you have a religion that the 6 of you put together, like that's your church. You guys hang out there.
Yeah.
Like you can talk to people more. And I think too, like if you have like people of different age groups in it too, then like some people are like maybe a little irresponsible. Maybe some people are like elders for other people, like trying to teach them stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you need help with finances? Like, yeah, I figured that out 5 years ago. Like, let me teach you some basic finances stuff, right? And in terms of like, I mean, even just for parenting too, like, oh, like you just ask someone else in the building to watch your kids, right? Like, these things are so much easier when you have that kind of like tribe there, right?
Yeah.
Like zoning laws are such a big part of, like it just makes it all worse, right? Like
I think a big reason why we have a lot fewer kids than we do today is that, like, one, we're less likely to live near our parents and have people who like you can depend on, right? Like, could my sister be having her kids right now and be like fully independent? Like, I'm not even sure she could. Like, I don't know if she'd be at the stage of life where she could make that decision without having my parents close by. I mean, she probably could manage, but definitely wouldn't be as easy.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't want, like, 3 kids rather than 1 or 2 if my parents weren't there as like a factor to help, right? And so, like, I even think about like the way that we disperse from our friend groups and relationships as we grow up. Like, historically, people did stay a lot more local. And, I'm not saying that like the modern world where people have opportunities and they can go different places is a bad thing, but I definitely think it's come at the expense of like, investing in some of these traditional forms of happiness. Like you take that, like the macro lens, and the result is like people do not have the personal circumstances and support to have either kids at the time that they want to, or the number of them that they otherwise would have with these other factors available. Which is just one of the many contributions to the milestone recession that young people are going through that I think is a very underrated topic in politics.
Oh yeah. That's bad. I do want to bring it back to like, what can we do about our lives, at least? And where were we?
And I have a couple of things like I can just answer that question. There are way fewer restrictions than people realize. Like, even like when I like More Neighbors, I was surprised at the response that I got from people. Like, you can actually just go and do things, and actually like the biggest barrier for the most part is actually just doing it rather than thinking about it.
Yes.
Right? Like, just like get started and go, and that's a great way to actually do things. You're far less.
This is the same thing as the journey before, right? Yeah. You're not thinking about, oh man, how am I going to fix all the problems in housing? You're thinking about, I'm going to start this right now. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And like, hopefully it goes well. We'll see.
Oh, like, if you're like, even like entrepreneurs, right? Like, how do I build this massive business? Yeah. Right. It's like, well, actually, maybe I just need to start with like, who's my target audience? Do I even have a website? What is my brand? Well, right.
A good way I heard someone like describe this once is that if you have like a really, really big goal, very common advice is like break it down into smaller goals, right? But I think don't just break it down to smaller goals, like keep breaking it down to smaller and smaller and smaller, and like into infinitesimal size goals. And the most infinitesimal size goal, that's the best goal. Yeah, that's like the Ray Dalio way of thinking, where like, you can think about a goal, but like everything at the end of the day is a series of systems. And like you can eventually break down any even massive problem into like a series of systems. And then you can like, if I know what these systems are, what are the variables that push this system, and which variables are things that I can't change and so I shouldn't focus on. Yeah. Which I also find just a very helpful way of thinking about like, even in my career where I'm helping people, hey, we have this problem, like what's our strategy to do this? It's like, well, do you think your problem is what it really is? Right? Like, people say like, well, I think housing needs to be more affordable, right? It's like, well, how are you going to do it? Like that's a problem. That's a problem, but that's not like the issue. So like, why isn't it affordable? Yeah. Right. Like, well, there's greedy people who are buying up the thing. So it's like, well, no, like let's talk about what the dependent and independent variable is there, right? Why are they buying up the thing? Well, because they're speculating. Like, well, what are they speculating on, right? And you eventually can go low around that you can find like, hey, they're speculating
because the government policy landscape is such that population will grow faster than housing supply, right? There's lots of additional below reasons for that. But, like at the end of the day, most people's problems that they think are up here are actually like a much smaller system over here,
Right.
that they just haven't asked enough whys yet.
And I think when you go to like that kind of small system, you realize like you can actually have an impact on some of that. Like you can go to a local zoning meeting and speak up for new housing that needs to get built near you, right? Like that's an action that you can take today.
Yes.
It's like the small steps are things
And
that
it's
you
super
can do.
simple.
It's
Yes.
it's right. It's easy, and that will make a difference. And it's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to get you closer. And I was thinking too,
Trying is also just underrated in general. Like, I feel like in like my day to day, right? The biggest difference in someone like that I'm working with, or someone that I'm even trying to mentor, is like, can I see that you tried, you put the effort in, and you saw some of the attention to details? Like, did you do what I asked, or did you like think about what I asked? Right? And they're like very different things. And like the impact and progress you can have in your life with effort, and like, there's no value in half-assing anything, in my opinion. Right? Like, you should go forward in life putting effort into the things that you're doing. And if something isn't worth putting the effort in, then you should probably not be doing it. Outside of like, I need food and shelter. Right?
I mean, like in one sense I agree, but I feel like there's another sense in which I disagree. Maybe it's because they're two different things. I'm trying to square those, but like for me, I have found that not necessarily half-assing stuff, but like doing it and not trying to make it perfect has been like really, really important.
Yeah.
And like you learn so much from that you can just do it again next time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I guess I'm not half-assing it, but
I agree that perfection isn't like a noble goal.
Yeah.
But put an effort for people in the things that you are doing, and you will find that it returns to you more so.
Don't half-ass the effort.
Yeah.
But like putting the full effort in doesn't mean making it perfect.
Yeah. You're never going to get to perfect. But like I said, like the trying matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Like actually try. Right?
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to actually try, then
you shouldn't be doing it.
It's not, well, even just like when I started the podcast, right?
Yeah.
I was like, either I'm going to like commit to doing this many episodes and like actually try.
Yeah.
Or there's no point of starting. If I'm going to do like one episode and just like quit, like, I'm not even going to start it. It's not worth my time. And every episode's not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm learning as I go, but I'm like, I got to at least do like this much so I can say I put in a good effort.
Yeah.
And then if after that I don't want to keep going, I'll stop. But
yeah, I mean, and like there's lots of other ways to, like, I think kind of like lock in, right? Like, I think place is one of them, right? Habit is another one, right? And like, I think habits govern a lot more than people realize, right? So like, here's like an underrated habit, right? I think if everyone said, hey, 2 hours every month, I'm going to volunteer for something in my community that I care about. You would be absolutely shocked what an impact that is going to have in your life.
Yeah.
Like absolutely shocked. Right? Like to the extent that like, I don't think people realize how much it would probably change their life. But that's a very simple, easy commitment, and it's a very easy habit to form if you start it. But it's the same as like, a habit of going to the gym 4 times a week. Like 20 years from now is going to mean so much to your life than not having it, right? So like walking in is also not just like, hey, this is my goal, right? Like this is my commitment. But like walking in is also about behavior and a way of living your day-to-day life. And like enjoying the process of going through it.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I don't even think necessarily about like going this much a month, even though I do that. But it's just like, I need to go today. like I need to go to the gym today. Today I'm going to the gym. That's what I'm doing, right? Or like today I'm going to go volunteer, and I'm going to volunteer and put my effort in, and then like just doing that makes you want to do it again a little bit more the next time, right? Yeah. And like I actually started meditating, and I feel like meditating is like a concentrated version of this. Yeah. Like you're just teaching your brain to be better at this by like doing like the most boring thing possible, and then your brain just gets better at like doing things because you're just trying to do something. Like you're just like, I'm just going to focus on my breath, right? And then you get better at just like focusing on one thing and like choosing to do a thing.
I've never been great at meditation, so
I think it's a very common misconception is that like the way I understand meditation is it's not for people that are good at it. Yeah. Okay, meditation is like going to the gym and lifting weights. If you're already big and strong, you don't need to go to the gym. There's no point. But if you go to the gym and you can't pick up the bar, you need to go to the gym more than other people, right?
Yes.
Right? If you go to the gym, you're like, this sucks. I hate this. Like, I'm the weakest guy here. Like, you need to be at the gym the most, right?
Yeah. I remember at the start of the pandemic, I was still in SF at the time. And, I was working for a startup that was in like the restaurant space. Not a great time for that industry either.
Yeah.
So I was like pretty stressed. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to meditate. And like, I ended up just breathing too much. Mm-hmm. And so like I went and like talked to a therapist about it after. I was like all my, like I felt like something was happening to my body. Like all my limbs went numb.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, you probably had too much oxygen because you hyperventilated. I was like, okay. Like, so clearly the whole breathing app thing that I was following, I was way over breathing. Right. So
I think part of the problem with meditation is it's got to be personalized to you a little bit. And the apps are not the best for that.
Yeah.
Like even like I've learned my meditations from Dr. K because he knows this stuff really well, but even that is like he only gives you like the basics. He doesn't go into the details too much, unfortunately. And I don't know necessarily.
I'm bad at being chill, which is one of the things I haven't properly locked out of. Is learning to have a bit less intensity, and I feel like that will eventually bite me. But they all say that you become your parents eventually, and like if you ever met my mom, there's like not she's brilliant, but she's not low intensity, and I'm like, is this just how I'm gonna be? Like maybe, but
I see it in myself too, but
you live long enough, you become your mother, and it's true. So if you're 22 and you're like, I'm nothing like her, just wait.
I would encourage people to look more into meditation and try it some more.
Yes.
You too, Eric. Like it's maybe I'll teach you meditate. Do you want to learn a meditation right now?
We could, but I do want to make one more point, right? And like this is something that I've failed at, and I think a lot of other people is like learning to think about your time as not something that is productive.
Oh,
right.
This is like a lot of
like it's something that I, especially right now, because I've had a very busy year with work. I've been almost like just working too much, and I haven't been able to make time for pleasure, or even like thinking about like vacations as an independent consultant. I'm like, I'm always thinking like, well, there's an opportunity cost to me not working. Mm-hmm. It's like one of the things that I'm trying to learn how to do better is to do things that are literally a waste of my time.
Oh man,
at scale. And I'm not good at it, and I realize it's probably making me unhappy.
We could have a whole episode about this, Eric.
I'm sorry I brought it up just now.
I have exactly the same problem. Like, I need to go to the washroom, so maybe we could talk about this a little bit more.
Okay. So do I just like look into the eyes of everyone waiting in this podcast and just be like, did I look more seductive?
And we'll
unbuckle this shirt.
We'll edit it out, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're back to the episode. So, Eric, we were talking about productivity and being not productive. And it's interesting. I actually watched a Diary of a CEO episode recently.
Yeah.
Where he was talking to Dr. K, and that's exactly his problem. The Diary of a CEO guy who's like, he started, I don't know how many companies, he's got hundreds of millions of dollars. And literally the problem that they realized he had, that I have, that apparently you also have, is that we're like always trying to be productive.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, for me, it's like an old trauma of like, if I'm not productive, then like, I'm not worthy of love and there's something wrong with me. And so it's like, it's hard to get over that and like be not productive. Cause like, even for me, what I've started to do is I've started to frame like fun things as productive.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I'm hanging out with my friends today. Like, that's productive. Good job, Ramsey.
Yeah.
Right? And then like hanging out with my friends is not a waste of time now.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh man, I think I need to masturbate. Like that's, you know what? Like my body needs that. It's actually like a functional evolutionary need. So that's productive time now. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so then what, I'm like in this trap, and I don't know if you're in a similar trap or if you've made to that point of the thing yet, where it's like now everything I do is productive, but like, I don't think it's healthy to feel this way about like hanging out with friends.
I feel like, you know, maybe productive isn't necessarily like the right way of framing this feeling, but it's more of like, I don't like how structured life is all the time. Like I found like, even if I've, you know, when you're a kid, right? Or when you were a kid, I mean, we didn't have smartphones.
Yeah.
So like, if you wanted to go hang out with your friend, let's say it's like August, right? You call their home phone, you're like, they actually might be there just outside. Mm-hmm. Like I just like go on my bike and like go see if they're there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a very unstructured behavior. But I find like now it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna see my friends. But like we've scheduled brunch for 1 p.m. on Saturday.
This is really good.
Or like we're gonna hang out Friday night and we're gonna go to X thing. Right? Or like I go see my parents and I'm like, it's my niece's second birthday, and then I have my nana's birthday on Sunday. Right? And so much of what life has become is calendarized, it's like structured, and like I personally feel like
everything's planned. There's always a plan.
It's planned. And so to some degree it's like productive, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my time and I'm allocating that time to maximize productivity across like these areas.
Even fun productivity. Like,
Even fun productivity.
We're gonna watch this movie because we have to watch this movie. It's like a good movie. Like,
and like I feel like there's not a lot of time to just kind of figure it out. Like one of the reasons why I like
connect.
I like, you know, some people like traveling. Like when I travel now, I actually like, I might have a bit of a schedule of like which city I'm going to be in. But if I travel with someone who's like, oh yeah, like itinerary, like this, I'm like, no, my life back home is already too structured. So like, I want to get to a place and not have any plans. I'm going to walk around, and if something seems cool, or we end up in a cool area where there's a thing, we're going to go talk about doing it at that moment, because I find there's no escape from structured productivity. Like you plan a date and it's on Tuesday and it's at 7 p.m. after work, right? Like modern society does not give us flexibility with our time, I think, in the way that will enable more people to find forms of happiness.
Oh my God.
And what's worse is that when people actually have that unstructured time, they end up on fucking TikTok and not doing something interesting and random, unproductively. Like, I don't know. Modern society has stolen some fundamental freedoms of like how people live their lives and make choices with their time.
Yes.
That I think is actually not healthy for us.
It all connects, Eric.
Yes.
Because so I guess the first thing I'll say is, again, in my experience, the best times I've had were where there's some like level of unstructured to it.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're gonna hang out today. We don't know what we're gonna do. Right.
Yeah.
And it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Even recently, my partner and I, we didn't have any plans for the day. It was like during the snowstorm, and we're like, let's just go for a walk. She's like, I want to go for a walk, actually. And I was like, we need to get food. She's like, I want to go for a walk. And I was like, all right, let's go for a walk. And we went for a walk. And it turns out there's like this small little movie theater nearby her place. And they were showing some like old Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah.
That, like we watched it. It was so good.
Nice.
It was like, it's like starting like 10 minutes like after we got there. And we're like, yeah, can we buy tickets? He's like, yeah. He's like, whatever. And then like, we needed to eat. And we're like, do you guys have food? They're like, no, but you can bring food in. So we like ran across the street, grabbed a shawarma, ran back in, got in time for the movie. And it was fucking great.
Yeah.
And like, I think this goes back to like the thing I was saying earlier, like everything's connected. It's too much like of the like logical brain kind of side and not enough of the like creative side. Like it's too much like planning, it's too much like logic, math, like this kind of stuff, and we don't have enough of the like openness, like liberal arts side. And I think that's where like it's just, let's just have like just, I think there's a balance to it, and like society, so much of it is way too much on the like logic side, and like the happiness is found in the middle. And even this connects back to housing and stuff, because when we were watching the Studio Ghibli movie, and all the Studio Ghibli movies are like really cute Japanese cities. Yeah. And these are very unplanned cities, and the characters always end up on some kind of like random adventure because they're just like walking around the like unplanned, like not super designed city where there's like little alleys and this and this and this, and they just like, and then when we were watching, she just like follows a cat and ends up at an antique store, and it's like so cute and it's great, and she's like, and that like sets the stage for her life. Yeah,
I bet you like if you're listening to this, if you think about the days that you've had where you had no structure, but you went and did something because it was random, you almost certainly have a ton of memories. Yeah, and like if you think about probably many of the best moments in your life, they've probably all happened as a result of unstructured time with people that you like, right? Like it almost universally, those are where you...
Those are amazing days.
Right?
Like, holy...
And I know, I often think about like how, like, we've probably overtaken away this from people at large with how we design our cities, the expectations of modern life, careers, etc. And so, you know, I'm not saying I'm living my life in creating unstructured time, but like one of my aspirations for myself
need to do
is to create like, I almost need to like create time to not have anything to do, but to say like, hey, do you want like this weekend, 2 weeks from now, no plans, but I'm not going to just sit at home.
Yeah, it has to be like you have to go outside. Yes. Or like you have to not be doing like the quick dopamine hit activities. Yes. I don't know what I'm going to do, but not dopamine hits. Yes. Right? But like, I don't know. And it like... Yeah. I think that's, because I think even like, because when I'm scheduling, I'm scheduling like fun things, and my brain thinks of it as productive, the real waste of time is to schedule nothing. Yeah. Right? Not to schedule fun, but to schedule nothing and then see where it goes, and hopefully you end up at some cute movie theater. And
but almost like the problem is, you know, people, because everyone is scheduled, like you have to be, it's like not like, hey, it's a random day, let me go see what like Jerry Jim is up to. Yeah. You know, it's...
I've noticed you can do that more than you think. Like the other day, my friend just called me, and I was like just sitting at home, and I was free, and I was like, and we just chatted, right? Yeah, and it was fine. Or even like if you do have people that live near you, you can be like, hey, are you free right now? Like, let's hang out, and you have to be okay with them saying no too. Yes, right? Because like that's part of the unexpectedness is you don't know if you're gonna hang out with them today.
At the Toronto Society talk last week, we were talking. And, you know, we were both kind of commenting that, like, kind of just, like, tired. Like, life's been busy. Yeah. And that, like, we're both planners among some of our friend groups. Yeah. Right? And that, like, we're finding that tiring. Right? And it's almost like... It's almost tiring because, like, you have to deal with all of the
who's free,
scheduling.
Who's not free,
It's like, I don't know. I don't have a solution for this. Like, how do we culturally schedule less of... the fun stuff in our lives? And like, I will say Toronto is particularly bad at this. And I think one of the reasons for it is like, even if you're going to go to dinner with people, like it's hard to not schedule a reservation at a restaurant. It might be full, but like there are plenty of other cities where like
you just show up.
You can just go. Like when my parents have a place.
No, even like if I show up early at a restaurant in Toronto, like the people are mad there because they're like, we need to get you out to get the next table in because there's a reservation.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just be sitting here for half an hour waiting for your friend.
Yeah.
Like, if someone's late, like, it's not.
Yeah. Like, my parents have a place in Sarasota. And I find it's because it's a smaller city, for whatever reason, there like isn't the demand.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I make reservations places and I go there and then it's like I could have just walked in.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like I went through like the process of doing this. Because like culturally in Toronto, you almost have to.
Well, you know what? I think part of the thing with Toronto is because it's like this big city and everyone's trying to get the best.
Yeah.
Like a lot of time when I'm going out with friends, like we got to try like the new cool restaurant or something, or even just like it has to be like a good restaurant. We can't just go to like some like mediocre place.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you go to the mediocre places, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. But like we're like living in the city. We got to try the best thing.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily like sometimes the restaurant is like really that good and you're excited to try it. But I think a lot of time I just want to hang out with my friends and like the restaurant to me is like an excuse to get them there and then like we'll see where the night goes kind of thing. But actually it could be any restaurant. Like it's just we're just hanging out. It doesn't have to be some place that needs a reservation. Like if you go to the chains, I feel like normally you're okay. I don't want to go there.
I wonder how much, people's like forms of like depression or just being tired is just a response to having so little unstructured, unintentional time where it's just like, but then
those days are easier too because you didn't have to think about planning it, right?
Yeah.
You just take it as it goes.
Right? So, I mean, I'm not sure how you instill a bit more than that outside of, well, number one, taking planning away from the bureaucrats and allow things to happen more organically so that there are more organic places and then people can be out and about and have more organic experiences, visit where they live. Like, I even think about things like this. Like, why is it that my floor in my condo building doesn't have like one room that's dedicated as like, there's a pool table and a TV on it, and there are people in there sometimes, and like they're just watching something, and I can walk by like, hey, like what are people watching?
Right? We have a room like that in my building, but I feel like people don't use it for that. And like I'll go there with some friends that will just use the table, but it's not like a common area. Even though it's like it's a huge condo, there's lots of people that could be using it like that to like make friends or just hang out. Or
well, for my building, you have to rent it out. Like you just put your name on a list, whatever, right? Like you can't just like, oh yeah, like there's stuff going on here today.
Yeah.
Right. So like I feel like we also need to just find more. Well, it's the whole argument that we have no third places anymore, at least like the extent that we need them.
I think it is cultural too, though, right? And like people are like, it's a two-way thing. Like it's harder to not do planned things, but also like we're used to planning everything.
Yeah.
Like even as I was thinking about when planning something with friends, like I'm like checking everyone, like, are you free this day? Are you free this day? Are you free this day? Instead, I'm thinking like, just say, hey, I'm going to this restaurant on this day.
Yeah.
Are you free? If not, like, sucks. Like, and if one person shows up, great. If 7 people show up, great. Like, it's not.
Yeah. I think Toronto
do less planning.
Also has just like, almost like less unplanned common spaces. So like, here's what I mean by that. Like, if you go to London, one of the things that I kind of find cool there is that like people think about what they call a local. And it's a very common if like you have a local. It's like a bar that you go to where you know the owner, they serve some good food, and there's events going on, and there's people in the neighborhood, but like you kind of know them, and you go there to hang out. It's like not really like a cultural thing here, right? Similar to like the elderly Italian who goes to like his cafe just in the morning around midday to like grab an espresso and a snack, and there's other people that he runs into there.
Yeah. I love that.
Like we kind of don't have that culture here.
All right, and we're back. We were talking about planning and not living a planned life, and
or just making more time for lack of structure, but also filling that lack of structure with real things.
Yes, not TikTok.
Yes, right. Which is not something I'm giving it as advice, but it's also like advice to myself.
Yeah. As advice for that's the advice I need as well.
Right? And I think just making, you know, I always want to say like I want to make more time, particularly in the summer, to just like have unstructured time. But then you're competing with people to have unstructured time. So you should also go tell all your friends to not make plans for things, so then you can all have random fun plans together later.
Well, like even like some days I think that I've had that were fun by accident was we planned brunch together and neither of us had anything left planned for the rest of the day. So it's like, hey, do you just want to hang out for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay. And then we did, and we did like 100 other things that day, right? After brunch.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, so I think even just saying, let's meet up Saturday morning and see where the day goes, right? Yes.
No. Modern society has us way too connected to things, way too scheduled. And, you know, like distracted. Right? So
it takes a lot of self-awareness to not like fall into the easy pitfalls of these things.
Yes.
Just to not go on TikTok.
Which is why I'm saying this not as a practitioner of this good advice, but as an aspirer to this good advice.
That's why it's locking in.
Yes.
That's why it's locking in with Ramsey.
Yes.
Because I'm not locked in, you're not locked in, but we're figuring it out.
Yes.
All of us are figuring it out together.
Locking in.
Locking in.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
So thank you for being on Locking In with Ramsey Kalani.
Great.
All right.